Everyone makes assumptions about the world around them, constantly. Specifically, we assume our senses are correctly perceiving the world around us, despite our senses being perfectly capable of perceiving falsities. This was an incredibly frustrating thing for René Descartes, who basically spent his entire life trying to learn what he could prove existed without his senses. But even aside from sensory observations, we make hundreds of assumptions every day with our interactions with others. It can be broadly put like this. There is the way that John perceives himself, the way that Jack perceives John, and the way that John is in all reality. See, there's a string of reality in every perception, but it is markedly different from the actuality. Now there's plenty more to say about this idea, but more on that later. Now, stay with me here. I think Panty and Stocking is a wonderful, wonderful example of this idea. Think about it for a second. From the ground up, it pushes this idea. From the art, to the characters, to the universe, to the plot itself. Everything reinforces this idea that nothing is what it seems. Well, an example, angels are deviants, devils are law-abiders, priests are immortal gangsters, the mayor of town is a bondage freak, and God is a woman. Really, every single character ends up being quite different than they are initially perceived. Even beyond that, the show is drawn in a very cutesy style, sort of like the Powerpuff Girls or Dexter's Lab, but the themes and jokes are all mature audience intended. The music couldn't be any more bubblegummy, but it's singing about genitalia and using double entendres. People seem to either love this show or totally hate it. Most of the complaints I hear are about the show lacking any real substance, but I feel the people who say that are missing a lot of the subtle things. Probably the same people who didn't like Sucker Punch either while I'm thinking about it. The show itself is a lot of good dirty fun, but the recurring theme of flipped perception is what makes it endearing, to me at least. To return to that, there is a string of reality in every perception conversation we were having earlier. Kant called that idea a Ding in sich, or a thing in itself. The idea is that a Ding in sich is independent of any perception, or conceptualization, or reasoning. They exist in a free state of unknowability, and are by nature and necessity unexperienceable. It's often stated in philosophy circles that the study of this concept is pointless, because a thing in itself is unknowable. But that's missing the point somewhat. See, a common misconception is that the thing in itself is a separate entity from what is perceived. However, that's not what Kant had intended when putting forward this theory. The idea is that everything has sort of twofold existence, as I mentioned before, what is perceived and what the reality is. Remember the Fight Club line, "You are not your job"? That's sort of a good way to think of it. Jack's job is to wait tables, so John perceives him as a waiter, but Jack is not a waiter in and of himself. Get it? Yeah, it's something to ruminate on at least. Now, this idea is not to be mixed up, as all too often it is, with the idea of a nomenon, which is something that exists independent of sensory perception. We can talk nomenon some other time, though I've addressed it a bit already before. Beyond a Ding in sich, I can't think of much more to say about Panty and Stocking though. So until next time, Philosotakus, please stay hungry.